Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Red Circle. Also on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. That's where you can actually see us and get the rest of our content. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. Also, check us out on Off the Floor. That's where you get text directly to your phone from Alex, Brady, Greg, and myself. Bypass Twitter, X, Instagram, and everything else. $3.05 per month. Free for the first week. Go to Winnow. That's with two N's. Winnow.app. /off the floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That includes Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Get your initial deposit matched up to $100. Hope you played Tua over and Tyreek over. I would play Tyreek over the rest of the year. Get the initial deposit matched up to $100. Of course, you can play everything at Prize Picks from MLS to NBA to NFL and even esports, which is actually appropriate for where we're at today. Check them out at prizepicks.com. Use the code FIVE for 5. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. And if you're watching on YouTube, welcome to the ROK ESports Center, right near University of Miami, down here in an area I don't usually trek down to that much. I'm here with Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick. And at 5 Reasons Sports, we'll have more on that as we go forward. But this is Jimmy Butler week on the 5 on the Floor podcast. And the reason that this is Jimmy Butler week, although this is not why we came up in the first place, but it is convenient when birthdays tie in. Jimmy Butler is turning 34 years old on September 14th. So actually this week, he's turning 34 years old. He's been trekking around the country and the world. He's been selling coffee. He's been watching his friends win U.S. Open championships. He's been hanging out with Jaime Jaquez in the sauna and all kinds of other things that he's been doing. But it's going to be basketball time soon. And so we're going to get into some Jimmy stuff this week. We're going to do a Jimmy-related draft. We're going to get into some of his best teammates since he's been here. We're going to get into expectations and kind of where he ranks in Heat history. But right now, Alex and I are going to get into the basketball part of this because Jimmy is turning 34 years old this week. And I don't know when the Heat got Jimmy Butler, which going all the way back to 2019 after the attempt to get him from the Minnesota Timberwolves and Pat hanging up the phone on Tibbs and then having to wait until he was in Philadelphia and then Philadelphia making the idiotic decision to keep Tobias Harris and bring in Al Horford and everything else that played on there. I don't think we thought in 2019, that the Miami Heat would get to the NBA Finals twice, conference finals 3 times, come close to winning a championship, maybe more so against the Lakers in the bubble than against Denver this past time. And that Jimmy would be playing at this kind of a level at this age at the end of his initial contract. Now, since he signed an extension, and if you look at the numbers on the extension here going forward, and I was just looking at this before we went in, this contract now goes, I guess, through like 3 more seasons, correct? And when you look at the end of it, we talk a lot about the Dame Lillard deal, but $45 million this year, almost $49 million the year after, and over $52 million his final season before he becomes an unrestricted free agent. He wanted a contract without caveats. He wanted all of the money, and there were some Heat fans who were concerned about it at the time, but I think most went along with it. But I don't know that you can have a concern about it at this stage when you look at what the other contracts in the league have gone for. You see Desmond Bane, Tyrese Halliburton getting $50 million a year. You make an argument that Jimmy Butler at this level, as a top 10 player when it matters, is there. The question becomes, because I don't think Jimmy's going to be the type of guy who plays till 40. I asked him that question. He says he's going to be doing something else. The question we're going to ask here is, how do you maximize the remaining years of Jimmy's deal here? So we're talking about 3 seasons, and we're talking about, again, him turning age 34. So he will be 37 by the time that this is over with. Not everybody is LeBron James and plays that long. If I was to say to you the single most important thing that the Heat have to do to maximize Jimmy's last 3 years, Alex, you say what?
Well, I think the easiest answer, if you just ask me the single, is, get him somebody who takes the pressure off him to have to be always the number one guy, because I do think, he doesn't have to be the number two for this to work, and end with a championship. We've seen that already. We've seen it play out with the success they've had so far in the Jimmy era, the two finals, the almost third finals trip last season. I just think at this point, it's also the obvious answer, because everything looming with Damian Lillard. Like, he's the perfect guy, not only because he's the perfect guy to take the pressure off of Jimmy from a scoring perspective. He makes everybody better. They're on the same timeline. They're both. I think Dame is 33. Do I have that right?
34 by the time the season starts. Yes.
Well, there you go.
Just turned, actually, I think.
There you go. So they're both going to be 34 when the season starts. They're both looking to win a championship and are, some of the hungriest guys in the league to win a championship. And so that would be the perfect outcome. However, I think he has, set himself up with the way that he's played consistently in the playoffs in this, in his Heat tenure, to give people the benefit of the doubt, for the people to give him the benefit of the doubt that, when it matters, he's going to be there and the Heat are going to be in the conversation, and they're most likely going to get far. Like, in the Jimmy era, more likely than not, they're going to get far when the team is healthy, when guys are out there. And even through, other guys not being out there, I think you can give him that benefit of the doubt now. And so the best way to, maximize, I think, the Jimmy era is, of course, get him another superstar like a Damian Lillard, who would make everybody better, take the pressure off of him and Bam to have to come up with all the scoring and playmaking. But other than that, it's just kind of giving him the right role players. And part of that is not letting guys who have been good role players for you walk in free agency. But I just think it's about maximizing a win now roster, and that's going to be probably the theme, if this Damian Lillard happens, the Damian Lillard trade happens, is that it's going to be about winning now, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, and you got to maximize that window.
I think the thing that's been proven here is that whenever we've said that Jimmy was going to be diminished in some way because of something, it hasn't actually occurred. So, we talk about the length that Milwaukee put on him, and Jimmy's struggling with that. Felt like he's kind of figured that out. It feels like the only thing that really could diminish Jimmy Butler was Josh Hart taking out his ankle, because we saw a totally different player after that happened. But you can make an argument that the Miami Heat have not, and again, you and I differ a little bit on this because I know the numbers say something different than the eye test on this one, and I'm a little bit more eye test. But you can argue that offensively, at least, that the Heat haven't put the perfect complement next to Jimmy, because I don't think if you would go out there and say, who's the perfect complement next to Jimmy as a superstar, as a star, you would say Bam Adebayo, based on the way that Bam plays. But it's been effective. You can't argue with the results. The results are, regardless of what you were in the regular season, whether it was first 2 years ago or whether it ended up being 7th and then 8th after the play-in, they got to the conference finals and within one shot of the finals, and then they got to the finals. And so they validated everything that they did in that bubble season. And they have not had another star with them during that period of time. They had a very high level Goran Dragic doing things that he had never done over the course of his career during the bubble. And they've had Tyler Hero at times being that guy. And like you mentioned, they've had high level role players, whether it was, a Crowder, Iguodala, or some of the guys that they've had, they've developed, whether it was, Strus, Robinson, Vincent, etc. And then they spent the money on Kyle, which is something that Jimmy wanted, which in some ways may have hamstrung this era a little bit, obviously until they decide kind of what's going to end up happening at the end of his contract. But Jimmy has overcome all of that stuff, and I think has put himself in a place where you really have to be blind at this stage, not to say he's one of the 10 guys that you would want in the playoffs. And I think you'd also have to be overthinking it to say he's going to diminish significantly athletically over the next couple of years, because that's never been a huge part of his game. I mean, we know when Jimmy has more lift sometimes than other times, but again, he's not relying on that to quite the same degree that even, say, Dwayne did early in his career, and Dwayne made that adjustment. And I actually think that Jimmy can play at a higher level later in his age than Dwayne can. But I do think that what you hit on is the thing. I don't think it's about the help for Jimmy Butler in the playoffs as much as people talk about it. I think it's the help for Jimmy Butler in the regular season to get him to his best self for as long as possible in the playoffs. Again, Josh Hart flukes notwithstanding, that he doesn't have the knee act up. He doesn't have sort of the other nagging things start to add up. and you start to talk about the minutes that he played for Tibbs early in his career.
The wear and tear.
The wear and tear. And I made the case when he came, and we went through the minutes on this. He's played like half of the minutes that LeBron played to this stage because Jimmy hadn't had as many long playoff runs as LeBron did.
He wasn't the chosen one coming in like LeBron, who was most minutes from day one. He worked his way up from being somebody who was barely in the rotation as a rookie to being a starter within a couple of years.
Well, he didn't start a game as a rookie. I mean, he played 40, 45 games. He didn't start a game as a rookie. He played behind, he was behind Rose, Deng, even Noah in the pecking order. He had to work his way up. So some of the Rip Hamilton, right? Well, exactly. So I think some of the wear and tear has been a little bit overstated, but still, you don't want to have him go through it. And so to me, that's what we talk about the Dame thing, all right? And there are really two reasons that the Dame thing matters. One is, I think we can get out of the East without Dame. They just did. I think they can again. But it's when you get to the finals and you're 2 or 3 months into a run like that, and you need a little extra to go against the best team that comes out of the better conference, typically the better conference, and you need that extra kick, and that's where Dame comes in. But to me, and I think you've hit on it, and we've talked about this a lot on 5 on the Floor, it's really about Dame being another guy to carry during the regular season. And that plays into some of the things we're going to get into after the break, which is how you manage Jimmy during the regular season, whether you have Dame or you don't have Dame, and how the NBA's rest rules, which they're talking about, looking at this week, play into that. Do you want Jimmy playing 65, 70 games? The fan frustration when he doesn't play and they go out to watch him play is palpable, but it also is not reasonable sometimes because you have to think about the big picture with this. So we're going to get into that as we go forward. But I think when we talk about that first press conference and the way that Jimmy answered the questions, but also the way that he talked about and Pat saying, we think he's a top 10 player in the league. And people kind of scoffed at that. Yeah. And now there's no argument for that. But the question is, how do you manage him? I think the ego is not as big of a problem. I think he'll move more to the side than others expected he might. But does his body allow him to still have the takeover moments as he goes forward, as he enters 34, 35, 36, 37 years old? Do you want to mention a couple sponsors here of the 5 Reasons Sports Network? Our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. That's All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram or allproconstructionbuilders.com. Reach out to our guy Danny and his team. We know hurricane season. I was saying it's around the corner. It's not. It's here. There are the Category 4 storms, Category 5 storms. They can still get you in, though, okay? So make sure you get the storm windows, the storm doors from Mention 5 Reasons. You get 10% off your entire order. They specialize, again, in the impact windows and doors for residential and commercial properties. But also, we know these days it's hard to find a house. And it's hard to find a house with the interest rates that they are. So if you're going to stay in yours and you want to renovate it, they can do that for you also. They're based in Miami-Dade, but they service Monroe and Broward counties as well. And it's a family-owned business, competitive pricing, but also quality service. Reach out to Danny and his family and his entire team. Do it at 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. Also want to mention our betting partner, that's Better Edge. Go to betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN at betteredge.com. We're running these tournaments. We had a big turnout for week 1 of the NFL season. It's $10 to play, but you get $20 if you simply use our code 5RSN. So it's basically playing free twice during the regular season. So check them out. We're going to be doing NBA tournaments as well, but also Better Edge. The big thing with them is they're legal. They're based in the state of Minnesota. They're not offshore. You will get your money, and you can find the line that you want. So check them out at betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN. What to you, Alex, NBA rules notwithstanding, what to you is the sweet spot for games for Jimmy Butler in the regular season at this stage?
I would say around kind of where he's been, more or less 65. And that's why I think it kind of goes right back to what we were talking about before the break was how do you get Jimmy to the sweet spot number of games while also keeping yourself in a pretty good, seed. We obviously know that they don't need to be a 1 or 2 seed to go far in the playoffs. We saw it in the most extreme of ways this past playoff run, but in general, I think that's not sustainable year over year. You can't be the Cinderella 8th seed every year. At some point after, going far every season, teams know what you're about, teams know what you're good at, and I don't think they're going to be underestimating you anymore after what they, he kind of just did in the last season. So all of that is to say, if they end up landing Damian Lillard, it's the perfect solution once again, just because You can kind of mix and match their games too. They don't always have to play at the same time. You can, if there's times where Dame might need a break, which, by the way, is not really a problem for him. Ever since the abdominal thing a couple of years ago, I mean, he's just the availability wasn't an issue, and we obviously saw the production and the game not only wasn't an issue but got better. And so I think the way that Dame ages is also a part of the way that Jimmy ages, because they obviously are going to affect each other's legacies if they end up playing together to start the season. And so I think, like you said earlier, like you alluded to earlier, we have gotten so much more out of Jimmy than I think we could have expected, especially when you factor in expectations, when you factor in the age, like you did earlier, that, he's doing this in his early to mid 30s. That stuff is going to get harder to tap into at that same level that he's doing it at year after year after year, if you're not giving him that help to offset some of the pressure that not only he has, but Bam has too. Because the thing is, you kind of expect Bam to be in that, if not all 82, 70 or above. Obviously, given no big injury or anything like that, you expect Bam to be up there as well and be Iron Man for you out there all season. So I just think, if they don't land Dame, they're still going to, like I said, they're going to be in the conversation regardless. I think that part is for sure. But that's why the Dame thing feels so like, at this point, you have to come out on the other side with him, because you've invested so much time into this, that even though I feel like they can compete and be a good team, and like you said, win the East without Dame, it becomes a lot more sustainable and easy to do with him, as these two guys who are going to be 34 when the season starts age together. Like I just think tapping into those what's the word? Tapping into that superstar level production in the playoffs is going to be hard if you can also, take some time off during the season. I think that wear and tear stuff becomes a bigger issue as you age. And I don't know if Jimmy's going to be able to keep doing that every season, as like you said, 34, 35, 36, 37, the years that he's on his current Heat contract. So there is a lot of pressure to land this guy. Otherwise, he can still do it, but it might not be, the best route. And that's just kind of where I stand on it.
Well, I think that they have a 2-track plan here. Yeah. And the first plan is Dame, and that takes care of it. And then there'll be a bunch of stupid questions asked about ego and whether Jimmy will give up shots when Jimmy doesn't give a damn about giving up shots. That'll be one of the narratives that we hear about. And again, only one ball, and nobody that's not going to actually affect anybody inside the organization or on the team. That's going to be one of those, again, external narratives, noise, peripheral opponents, as Pat Riley used to call them. Yes, right. Those will be, I hate to say it, I love a lot of these guys, but that'll be the TV channels question. I'm going to exclude some people, some of my favorites. We'll do a pod just to get through it, but I don't mean to give Will or Clay or Dean Pasquale or any of those guys a hard time. But I know that question's going to get asked at media day, for sure. But to me, the other track plan is with Jimmy is that you go get a guy in Jaquez who can simulate some of his skill set. And you have Tyler coming more into his own. And to me, those are the two key guys to preserve Jimmy if you don't get Dame. That Tyler has to take more of that burden. And obviously, I think he wants to. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. That's more Jimmy ceding that to him, to be honest. And Jaquez, their relationship that's already seeming to develop, and the fact that Jaquez's game is so similar to Jimmy's, and also that he's idolized Jimmy, that I can see a lot of that. And also Caleb's ability, if he's, again, still here beyond this season, and we'll see. He's obviously got a contract that they're going to have to deal with after this upcoming season, that he can replicate some of those things. So can you get enough from the three of them? The offense from Tyler, Jaquez's skill set, which has some Jimmy elements, Caleb, who we've seen can do some of those things and come up in those clutch moments, more so than Bam. I feel like there'll be a lot of conversation about Bam picking it up, and I know I've raised some of that, but the more that I've thought about it, I really think it's those three guys, because I think Bam has a niche at this point already. And I think sometimes we try to force Bam out of that niche, but there's more that Bam can grow in terms of confidence, in terms of assertiveness, in terms of obviously more long-range shooting, in terms of taking guys off the dribble, in terms of post-game. There's stuff we've discussed, but I really think it's those three guys. I think it's Jaquez, Caleb, and Tyler particularly who could do some of that. But the other point I want to make here before we close, and we thank our sponsors, Better Edge, All Pro Construction Builders, and Prize Picks, and also ROK Sports, ROK ESports Gaming Center, which is a great spot down here in Miami. Make sure you check them out. The one thing that I do want to get at here too is there's going to be a lot of conversation about like Team USA, right? We've already started that today as we're talking, where Windhorse, others are talking about LeBron is trying to put like a super team together. And I didn't see Jimmy's name on the original list. Like Bam's a possible target. Dame is a possible target. I don't know that you want Jimmy Butler doing that kind of stuff in his summers. Honestly, you don't need it. I mean, I think honestly at this stage, he doesn't care about legacy. His legacy is about winning a title now. And so not about a gold medal, and it's not about all-star appearances, and it's not so if he sits out all-star games, it's fine. Like I think doing the extras, to me, you do like LeBron still wants to do all that crap, to be honest. And I'm not saying playing for your country is crap, but I see the extra stuff. To me, about Jimmy, it is just solely about this at this stage, and I think his camp understands that. I think they understand him, and they understand what the priority is. If he wins a championship down here, not only does he get the banner in the rafters, which I think is going to happen anyway, but maybe he gets the statue, because honestly, he is in a lot of ways the Alonzo Mourning story revisited here, where it is trying to push the boulder up the hill, and Zoe couldn't push it up the hill himself. Sisyphus reference. He came back and got help pushing it over with Dwayne and Shaq. But Jimmy has been trying to do that to a certain extent by himself. Obviously, Bam, Dragic, others, Tyler have contributed. But if he does that, it is the most Heat story. Yeah. And
plus, he's already won a gold medal. And like you said, I mean, Bam is most likely going to be there from reports. Dame might be there, as a Heat representative, let's just say. And I mean, you would imagine Spo's going to be involved too.
Yeah, if he wants to be. We'll see if they bring Steve Kerr back. We'll see how that goes. All right. Exactly. All right. Want to thank Alex. Want to thank ROK ESports Center. Again, thanks to all our sponsors. Jimmy Butler Week. There will be more Jimmy Butler episodes here. By the way, Media Day is October 2nd. So we're only about 3 weeks out, finally, from actually being able to talk about some basketball. Have a good day, everybody.